welcome to episode 2 of Deeply Curious. My name is Cody Jensen.
My name is Sarah.
And in today's episode, we're going to be just exploring things that we are getting deeply curious about. And I know one thing that I'm going to talk about is kind of the science of popularity, specifically in music, because I think that's going to be intriguing to Sarah. But first, we want to let you guys know that this episode and every episode is sponsored by things that we love. And the things that we're loving this week for me is Moment lenses, which are some external iPhone, or actually not even just iPhone, any phone. Mm-hmm. They're lenses that you can attach to your phone to increase your photo game. And I recently got some of these Moment lenses, and I wasn't for sure. I knew I could use them, and I was excited about them, but there was one that is the fisheye lens that I knew was going to be like very much like a novelty, like just something that I wasn't even really planning on having it in my backpack or anything like that. But then I kept it in my backpack just to see what I could do with it, and I ended up loving the fisheye lens specifically for inside architecture photos. Not every piece of architecture, because if it's very linear, very like clean lines, it doesn't really work because it warps everything. But I got some really awesome photos of like the Oculus ceiling and the Fulton Center ceiling and the ceiling at the Guggenheim Museum. Like these photos that I definitely would not have been able to get with my DSLR because I don't have a wide enough lens, and also just my phone by itself. But I threw this like fisheye lens on, and they look awesome. Mm-hmm. But also I have the 80 millimeter portrait lens, which is super cool, and the 18 millimeter wide, the 18 millimeter wide is way more of a practical wide lens, but I was not expecting to love
It was a pleasant surprise.
Yeah. The fisheye as much as I did. So I wanted to just throw that out there that is something that I've been loving recently, and you can actually get your own Moment lenses by going to moment.codyjensen.com. And if you do pick some up, I would love to see what photos you take, and just tag me on Twitter or Instagram or whatever. I'd love to see what you're creating.
Yeah.
What are you loving this week?
I love Simon. So obviously the movie came out last week. Mm-hmm. And we went to see it on opening day, and I absolutely loved it. But I did read the book, and the book is phenomenal. And I think that the movie did a really great adaptation of the book, which I think every book reader is always a little nervous about. I actually appreciate the differences between the books and the movies, but I think most people want it to stay as true to the book as they can, and Love, Simon did a really good job of adapting the book for a movie, and so that's mine. Also, I cried like 12 times in the movie. It's just fantastic.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I did not read the book, but I did go see the movie with Sarah, and I thought the movie was awesome.
Yeah, it's a really, really great it's like self-aware, and like is obviously including, like it's all about inclusion and like telling people stories that's it actually happening, and they were self-aware of what they were doing, and it kind of has like the Fault in Our Stars teen vibe, which I really loved. It's funny, but also really sweet. Fantastic.
Yeah, I thought the love story just had like way more depth than like what you would kind of expect from a like young adult like teen movie.
Yeah.
But I feel like the character development was really good.
Yeah.
And like it really took you on a journey. And to me it was kind of like the visuals and like the way that it looked, it was very much like a young adult movie.
Yeah,
a Fault in the Stars vibe, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it's like none of that type of look is not going to get Oscar nomination.
Right.
But I thought the story itself, if paired with like the cinematography of an Oscar nominated movie, would be like a winner.
Yeah, it's a fantastic story. I think Nick Robinson, who plays Simon in the movie, is an incredible actor. I'm low-key obsessed with him. And it just all around was really fantastic. But I would suggest reading the book and then going to see the movie. because I just think it was a really great adaptation.
Mm-hmm. So if you want to read the book Love, Simon, there is a link in the show notes where you can get a affiliate link to Amazon, which helps us out as you make your everyday purchases. Okay, so I've been reading this book, and it's called Hitmakers, and it is by Derek Thompson, and it's about the science of popularity in the age of distraction. And I'm only like a few chapters in. I think only like 3 chapters in, but like I've highlighted so much of this book just because it's so interesting to me. And I'm sure there's going to be even more interesting and like I'm sure I'm going to find even more revelations and things as I read the next 3/4 of the book. But I just read this chapter on music, and if you guys didn't know, like Sarah is very much a music lover.
I'm obsessed.
Yeah, which is why Sarah doesn't listen to podcasts very often.
I was gonna say something about it, but then I was like, I'm on a podcast. I don't know if I can say. But the truth is that I don't listen to podcasts because it interrupts my time of listening to music. Like it takes away from my time.
Yeah.
So, sorry, podcasts.
Also, one thing I forgot to mention earlier is we do not live in a recording studio. We live in a studio in New York City. So you're probably going to be hearing a lot of honking and
some background music.
Some background noise because people are outside today. It is warm. So people are out there and enjoying their lives.
Yes.
Basically what this book is about, it's about popularity and why things go, not necessarily even viral, just why things even resonate with people, why, how hits are made. So whether that's in music or whatever, anything, it's like, like a hit product, a like, the iPhone or, just whatever. And I was reading this book and it made me think about you and music and but one of the things that I really found interesting is that it's talking about how in our brains we have this natural like pleasure center for things that are repeated. And so it kind of in the beginning of the book, it started talking about how it took this like class of like 5th graders or something, and it played them a recording of a woman talking, and she was just like saying this sentence, but then at the end of the sentence she said, I don't remember the exact phrase, but she said like, isn't it weird how something, or let's just go with, since I can't think of it, let's just say she said, isn't it weird? But then after she ended the sentence with isn't it weird, it repeated itself and she kept saying, isn't it weird? 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 And they said as it kept going, the whole class started to smile and then all started to laugh because that sentence, the same recording being repeated over and over again, started to turn into music for everybody.
Okay. It's just like what happened when we were watching Good Mythical Morning the other day, and Rhett was repeating. What was he repeating? Do you remember? It was 2 words. He was repeating it over and over and over and over again. And then they ended up switching. It sounded like the second word was actually being said first. That's crazy.
It's like, I don't know, it's like if you were to just say like milk duds, milk duds, milk duds, milk duds, milk duds. I can't do milk duds, milk duds, milk duds. But then eventually like your brain, you start sounding like you're saying duds milk, duds milk.
Yes.
And like you're just clearly saying milk duds.
Yes.
But that's not really what I'm talking about. More so like how the brain, it actually has the part of your brain that processes music and the repetitive nature is a different part of your brain that actually processes language. And so it was talking about how people with brain injuries, like, or with Alzheimer's or any, different brain disorders like that, they forget how to use language. And it talked about, I think her name is Gabby Gifford, the politician who was shot in the head, and she survived, but she very significantly damaged her language center in her brain. But they ended up playing like a song to her, and she ended up being able to sing the song perfectly, every single word to the song. And it was talking about how those are different parts of the brain, and how for some reason, like, music and those repetitive things, like, are able to stick.
I think they've done studies or conversations about music with autism and things like that, because autistic kids typically can sing and play music or respond better to music than they do speaking.
Right.
That's interesting.
So we got off on a few tangents there, but the main point that I'm trying to get to is that the book was talking about music and how musical hits are made, and it was specifically talking about pop music, and how if you think about pop music, generally pop music is the same as far as structurally. You know, it goes like verse, chorus, pre-chorus, chorus, bridge, or, you know, whatever that specific structure is. That's pretty much how all pop music works. But it was talking about how the way that hits are made, or the thing that makes us love certain like songs, is the fact that there is a segment of it that is familiar, the familiarity of it, combined with the newness of it. There's a specific, like, a perfect formula of, I already know kind of what this is, and this is brand new to me. And what's really funny is the things that we love the most are actually the ones that are the most familiar in our ancient brain, basically. Like, our subconscious brain loves everything that is the same. It loves anything that's repeated, anything that we already know, anything that, like, tells our brain, like, I know what that is. I recognize it. Like, that type of stuff, our subconscious brain loves. But our conscious brain fights against that because of the culture we live in, basically. And it says, wait, I've already heard crap like this before. I don't like it. And so we, like, go try to find.
Is that how your conscious
Yes,
brain
that's exactly. It's always talking like that.
I don't like
yes.
it.
I really like this paragraph. And that kind of sums up exactly what I'm saying.
Okay.
People find things more pleasurable the more times you repeat them, unless they become aware that you're being repetitive. People want to say, I'm not seduced by repetition. I like new things. But disguised repetition is reliably pleasurable because it leads to fluency, and fluency makes you feel good.
Interesting.
So that was kind of like what I was talking about. It's like people, their brains love the repetition, but our subconscious, like, if we become aware of it, we want to reject it and be like, no, like, I'm cooler than this. What made me, like, interested to talk to you about it, or the reason it made me think about you, is because I find this so often with you, is that you only love to listen to music that you've already heard before. Whenever I put on new stuff that I really like, or an album or anything like that, you're like, can we change this?
Yeah. Because, and so I've been trying to figure this out for a long time, because I love music so much. And I love discovering new music. Some of my favorite music in the last couple years has been music that I've accidentally found, or that you accidentally found and then showed me, like the 1975. The last couple years been like, got into Bon Iver and, you know, things like that. But I can't seem to move on from those. Like, every time I turn on music, it's the songs that I know, that I love. But I also love discovering new music. Like, for example, this week I discovered Vance Joy's new album that he put out last month, and it's phenomenal, right? I'm obsessed with it. But it's like, I just don't gravitate toward new music. And I was thinking that part of it is my personality type, because I like to, like, I'm an Enneagram type 4, and I have read a lot from like Ian Morgan Cron's book and stuff about how 4s like to extend like emotions that they feel comfortable in. And so they'll like put on certain music that they know kind of stirs up certain emotions for them, so that they feel like themselves. So I was thinking maybe it was that a little bit, that I tend to listen to the music that I know will stir certain emotions in me. But that makes sense too, because I feel like Vance Joy's new album is very similar to the other music that I always listen to. So maybe it is that.
Yeah, because the Even Vance Joy has
He has that specific
like vibe,
yeah,
that feels familiar, but it brings some newness to it.
Right.
That isn't
Maybe
the same.
Maybe it is that. That's fascinating. I'm learning so much about myself right now.
Yeah, and like I made a playlist this week. That I knew I made.
And I love it.
And it's a playlist of songs that are more emotional, I guess, or basically
more vibey.
Yeah, it's what I personally call like happy melancholy.
I love that. I'll take that descriptor.
And so it's like, if you've ever heard, well, basically I would say it's kind of the Bon Iver vibe.
Yeah, Bon Iver.
But the one, like the specific, like somebody I think that embodies happy melancholy to a T. It's exactly how I would describe his style of music is Tom Rosenthal, which he's not like a popular artist by any means. We
discovered him through Adrian Bliss's YouTube. He wrote all the music for his Vloon series and stuff like that.
Which, if you want to talk about things we love, highly recommend.
Adrian Bliss, I am obsessed.
I would say that Adrian Bliss is probably my favorite YouTuber.
Yes. I would 100% say Adrian Bliss is my favorite YouTuber. I wish he would do more series.
Yeah.
Because he is just so self-aware and dry sense of humor, so funny.
Yeah, if you want to know like what we think is funny.
Oh yeah, watch Adrian Bliss.
Watch Adrian Bliss.
I've rewatched Vloon. I don't even know how many times. Yeah, I love it.
But Tom Rosenthal wrote all the music for it, and it is that perfect like happy melancholy. But anyways, what I was saying is I made a playlist of those types of songs, and like it was easy to make the playlist because I didn't even have to listen to, like, as I was finding new music, I didn't even have to listen to the whole song. I could just like skip to the middle. And I felt the vibe, and if the vibe was familiar to what I already knew, I just added to the playlist.
There's one song in particular on that playlist that I had never heard of. I've never even heard of the artist. But right when it came on, I was like, this sounds like Sleeping at Last. I love this. And I didn't even have to listen to it. I just knew that I liked it. That's crazy.
One thing that I thought, this part of the chapter is like so funny to me, and also just like really, I don't know, it's very interesting, but then it's also just hilarious. So he was talking about how before 1991, the Billboard Top 100, there was no actual way to measure popular music. It was all self-reported by radio stations and by like record stores. And so record stores and radio stations alike were not incentivized to actually accurately report what was sold, because record stores didn't want to actually say, I don't know what was popular before then, but let's just say like the new TLC album or something. Like the new TLC album is sold out in their store, so they didn't want to report that it was sold out because they didn't have any more to sell. If they reported that it was sold out, people would come in looking for it. They don't have it, so they would rather say that this other album is more popular because they have stock of it. And
ooh, that's sketchy.
And what's crazy is like they basically created the market system that we have even to this day of turnover, and how just like with fast fashion and everything else, they wanted to make sure that we were churning and burning through this stuff. Like the most popular song that was last week is no longer the most popular. We want a new album to be the most popular because we want people coming into our stores every single week buying new albums. And that changed in 1991, where they actually were able to partner up with Nielsen, and they like had this new technology that was able to actually measure what was being played on radio stations and what was being purchased. And so in 1991, Billboard ditched this patchy honor system and started collecting point-of-sale data from cash registers. This was revolutionary. We were finally able to see which records were actually selling. This had two major implications. First, hip-hop surged the rankings while old-fashioned rock slowly began to fade. Perhaps an industry dominated by white guys hadn't paid enough attention to the music interest of minorities. And then in the footnote it said, which is ironic since pop music's gatekeepers in the 1950s initially considered rock and roll jungle music, and by 1980, powerful white men were protecting a genre that the previous generation of powerful white men considered a threat.
Wait.
So it's saying that in the 50s, whenever rock and roll and Elvis and everything, they were like, his hips are are conjuring the devil. And they were like trying to protect the world, old powerful white men, and they were trying to protect the world from rock and roll.
Right.
But then the next generation loved rock and roll, and they were trying to protect the next generation from hip hop. And
so the white people were protecting people from rock and roll, and then the white people were protecting people from hip hop.
Right.
To protect rock and roll.
Yeah, so that sentence again was, by 1980, powerful white men were protecting a genre that previous generation of powerful white men considered a threat.
Yeah.
And it's crazy because as soon as the actual data was being used, hip-hop surged. Mm-hmm. And what is another interesting thought on that is it's talking about music. In markets where popularity matters, information is marketing. When music listeners learned how popular hip-hop really was, it made hip-hop even more popular.
Right, because they were like, oh, this is cool music, I have to listen to it.
Yes, because we're so influenced by what other people like.
Yeah.
And so it was a cycle of other people like it, now I like it. But then as you listen to it more, repetition, you actually start to like it.
Right.
And so
then the more music comes out in that genre, the more you listen to it.
Exactly.
Interesting.
So that made me think about what they were saying, how there's a perfect balance between familiarity and newness, and how artists that we love come out with new albums.
Right.
And they come out with new albums, and if it is too the same, we're like, oh, it sounds the exact same as their old album. There's nothing new here. But then if it's a little bit too different, we're like, it doesn't sound anything like them.
Prime example is Mumford and Sons. That happened to them. Their first album, Sigh No More, came out, and it was phenomenal. Everyone loved it. Second album, Babel, came out, and the critics, people, I guess, in general, just bashed it. They were like, this sounds exactly like the first album. You haven't done anything new or revolutionary or whatever. So then they came out with their third album, and it was a little more rock, less of the banjo folky sound and a little more rock, and everyone hated it. They're like, this isn't Mumford and Sons. And I was like, okay, but you just bashed them for doing what they do, and now you're bashing them for trying something different? I don't understand.
It's like you have to walk that line and figure out that perfect formula of this is just enough of what the last album was, but just enough of what the new stuff is.
Yes.
And it's kind of like the journey that Taylor Swift has been on, and how she didn't go from Speak Now to Red, or not
Reputation.
Yeah, she didn't go from Speak Now to Reputation.
Yeah,
she went Speak Now, and then Red, and then 1989, and then Reputation, and each one of those was a little bit of the last album, and a little bit of the new. But I think that the problem maybe with the new album is that she went a little too far on the newness.
Maybe.
But what one thing that I was thinking about when I was thinking about Taylor Swift, but I was just thinking about new albums in general, how most of the time, through the first listen, it's like, that was okay. Whatever. Yeah.
You're like, oh, it's not there.
I listened because I like this artist, but it's not as good as the last one or whatever. But then you listen to the second time and you're like, that was good. Then the third time and the fourth time, and then you find yourself singing every song, and then you start dancing to it, and then you're like, I love this album.
Yeah.
And it's like that reputation, that repetition. It starts to signal those other parts of our brain that are like, you love this because you know it. It's a little bit of familiarity.
That's really interesting. It reminds me of, going back a little bit, I just read an essay by Zadie Smith from her new book that talks about, she was specifically talking about Joni Mitchell and how she hated Joni Mitchell until all of a sudden she realized she was humming Joni Mitchell, and then she loved Joni Mitchell, and now she can't not love Joni Mitchell. But what she said in there was that we want our artists to stay frozen in the time that we love them, but our artists want to move. And so, which I thought was a really interesting insight, especially to what we're talking about, finding that really thin line of newness but familiarity, and just like allowing the artist the space to move and create whatever they feel like they're supposed to be creating, even if it's not your vibe. Like, you know what I mean? I don't really know.
And that applies,
it reminded me of that.
Yeah, and that applies to like not just music, but to every creator ever. It's
right.
Like even with us and like as YouTubers, it's like there are going to be some people that as we evolve or if we change our format or whatever, even adding a podcast or whatever, there's some people who are like, man, I like their old stuff. They're much better like whenever. And it's like, cause it's new.
Right. It's because the thing is that people are people and we are all living life. And you're not one person from the time you're 18 till you die. You are 10, 12, 15 people. And so you're creating whatever that is going to change based on who you are in that moment. Same with music, same with artists, like as just is how it is. But as someone who like consumes their art, the reason you fell in love with them, you want that to stay the same. But the problem is that it can't, because they're not always going to be that one person. I just thought that was really interesting.
And you also don't, like we just talked about with the albums, you actually don't want them to stay the same.
No, you don't.
Because if they come out with a new album that is the same, you're going to be like, oh, this is just like more the same.
If Taylor Swift had stuck with country, we wouldn't have 1989. Now,
which some people would probably be like, hallelujah.
Right, but I feel like Red and 1989 are the best albums Taylor has ever created. And I know like Red was a little like tumultuous in her personal life and she doesn't ever want to create an album like that again. I get it. But I mean, we wouldn't have those if she didn't evolve, you know? I just feel like it would be a little bit of a sadder world if we didn't have Welcome to New York. You know, like I don't know.
It's also crazy. Like it just goes to show that literally everybody, because our brains are wired to hate change. Everybody hates change. Like even if some people like love like their outward personality, like ultimately they enjoy changing and they like new things.
Change.
Like, and so do I. But at the end of the day, we do all are attracted to familiarity. Right.
Well, it's just like too much change at one time is overwhelming and our brains don't really know how to handle it. It's the same. Like I guess maybe that was Mumford's problem. It is like they went from folk to rock instead of the in-between, whatever that is, you know?
I also wonder, though, if, like, some of those, it's not even about the artist. It's about culture as a whole. Because that year, those couple years that Mumford was, like,
they dominated
on top, was because almost all white people loved folk music at that moment.
I mean, like the Lumineers were the same way.
Yeah, it was like dominating. Like that genre was like at its peak, and there were so many artists who were like in that same. You know, they all played at Gentlemen of the Road together,
right?
And it was like, but then maybe all of society moved on to like this new genre, and they all got left behind. I don't know if that is actually what happened because Mumford tried to change their sound, and maybe they just went in the wrong direction.
Maybe.
And didn't add in some electronic, like, noises, because that's where the world ended up going.
But also, I think that also brings up the argument of, like, you shouldn't create things just because the world wants it, you know? Sure. Like, there's also, I mean, something to be said for staying true to your art, whether it's popular or not.
Right. I mean, that's what we try to do with everything as well. Right. It's like, if you don't like what we're doing, then don't watch it. Like, I'm not going to change what I'm doing because of you.
Right. Like, this is the art that I feel called to create. I'm going to create it whether the world likes it or not.
Yeah.
So much plays into the creation of art, whatever that art is, whether it's music or painting or whatever. But music, I think, is really evident. I wonder, does that mean, okay, so when you're listening to music, it employs two parts of your brain, right? Because there's the sound, repetition, and then there's the words, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I think
because, like, the words in every song are different. Like, that's always new.
Right. I think it depends on what you were doing. Like, if you were sitting there and, like, I don't have any science to back this up. This is my theory. I think it's, like, if you were listening to the song and trying to understand it,
Mm-hmm.
Like, and you were listening to it as like an audiobook or a poem or something, and you were like deciphering and like trying to understand it, that would use a different part of your brain than just listening to the song.
Absolutely.
And what's interesting is like the songs that are based what you were saying about Joni Mitchell, how she didn't like the song until she found herself humming it later. It was talking about how those are the hits because they became earworms, and they specifically like were designed to get in people's heads. And it gives like there is like this process in the brain that is for repetition, and you get in this I forget what it's called, but it's some sort of like repetition loop. And you get annoyed at me.
I do. Yeah.
All the time for this, because I'll listen to a song or hear a song in like some department store, and then all of a sudden, like 4 hours later, I'm repeating the exact same line. It's normally like the chorus or like the pre-chorus that's leading up, but I can't remember how it gets out of it, and so it's like the same line building up, and then I just repeat back to the same line.
Yes, it is the most annoying thing, especially when the Olympics were on and there was that one commercial.
Yeah.
What commercial was it?
It was the Walmart one where they were ringing the bell.
Yes.
And the song was Ring the Bell, but I can't think of the melody of that song now.
It was 2 lines of a song.
Yeah, it was like...
And he sang 2 lines of a song for 3...
I mean, that was the whole song. That was the only thing they played in the commercial.
Yeah, that's not the whole song, though. There's more of the song. And you just, every single day for the entirety of the Olympics, sang those 2 lines of the song all day. It was so annoying. But yeah, that definitely happens to you.
It happens to everybody.
I don't feel like I do that.
I mean, you don't sing it out loud and annoy people like I do, but like
maybe that's the
it gets stuck in your head, though.
Yeah, but I can't remember the last time a song got stuck in my head that wasn't from you singing one line of the song. You know? I can't remember that. But it could be because I'm only listening to my music. I don't listen to the radio. I don't, you know.
You know what's another interesting thing it was talking about in the book is it was talking about Sweden and how Sweden is actually the epicenter of pop music right now, because all of the big time pop music writers, not necessarily the artists, so you don't actually know their names, have all ended up in Sweden, because it was kind of like the start. And it was talking about how it's the same way how generally the same types of businesses end up forming or migrating to the same places, like Silicon Valley and like different things like that. There's these industries end up building because it's like there is value in like being around the same stuff. It like ultimately brings everything up. And so for some reason that has happened in Sweden, and like all of the big time pop music songwriters have migrated to Sweden, and it's like they have developed a specific pop music formula that every song is different. It's not like the songs that they write for Adele and the songs they write for One Direction are anything alike, but they follow this general formula of, like we were talking about, the just enough familiarity with just enough newness, and they basically know how to write a hook that will get stuck in your head. They know how to write an earworm.
Yeah. Here's the thing that I think this is fascinating, all of this, like just enough newness with just enough familiarity. There's a certain like structure that a good song, whatever. Part of me wants to reject that, though, because that takes away the mystery and the magic of music. Which I feel like is really important to people and to me. Like, that's why I listen to certain songs, to evoke certain emotions. Like, part of me really wants to be like, this is all false and it sucks and there is no magic, or there is no formula. It's just a good song is a good song.
Let me read this line again to you that we started this off with. People find things more pleasurable the more times you repeat them, unless they become aware that you're becoming repetitive. People want to say, I'm not seduced by repetition. I like new things.
But I don't think it's necessarily that I am like no, I like new things, not old things, whatever. It's the idea that there is science to writing a music that is going to evoke feelings into a person, you know?
Mm-hmm.
It's like the idea like, because I think, whether it's, bubblegum pop, feel good, whatever, or something like Bon Iver that is much more like emotional, I don't think it matters. There's some sort of like mystery, some sort of mystical, spiritual aspect to music. Like, you're writing something that is going to evoke emotions in a person and is going to make them feel understood or make them feel like they're not the only one, right? And so that feels more mysterious to me than just like, this is a good formula.
Right.
I want to reject the science of that. A little bit.
But the
half
thing
and
is,
half.
the thing is, because we live in a market-dominated world,
right?
You have to do both, or you don't have to do both. But you can just do meaningless stuff that follows the formula and make a hit. But the stuff that like has deep meaning and it has a message to be told, it can break out and become a hit regardless of a formula or whatever. But there's tons of music and more so like more music than is not. It sits with nobody listening to it, even though it may be a great message, maybe even a great song, but it didn't have enough familiarity to actually make it through and be widely known.
But that's so interesting, because it makes me wonder, like, how does it evolve? How do new genres pop up? How do these like interesting weird sounds happen that people love? Because if there has to be something familiar, like, you know what I mean? How can someone just like, what if tomorrow somebody is born who just has like this weird taste in music and has to share it, and then like, you know what I mean?
Well, I think that stuff like that can still make it.
Because there's like revolutionary things that
right.
happen.
I mean, it's kind of like, I'm pretty sure, I may be wrong on the composer here, but I'm pretty sure it was Beethoven. Like one of the original like composers like that. There's the story of how they played their symphony or whatever it was, and it was so new that people literally went crazy and hated it. Like they rioted because of how new it was.
Yeah.
But eventually, I mean, it changed the world.
So I guess maybe revolutionaries are just a little ahead of their time. I guess I like it half and half. I totally understand the familiarity with the newness, because that's definitely how I listen to music and discover new music, but part of me wants to reject that science.
I mean, I think we all would want to reject it. I mean, because we all want to think that we are more than just like cogs in some like, industry wheel.
You can't tell me who I am. You don't know me.
But one number that I thought was really interesting in the book, and I can't remember the exact percentage, so just, the ratio was about the same as this, but just, I'm definitely not going to get this spot on. But it said basically like the top 2% of artists, so the Taylor Swifts, the Biebers, the top 2% of music artists make 80% of the music revenue.
Yeah, that is insane. But it really doesn't surprise me, because one, I think the music industry is one of the most saturated industries out there. I mean, it's notorious for not being able to make it, in the music industry. But then also, does that include like concert tickets and stuff like that?
I mean, I would assume so, because I mean, that's like...
Because then that definitely makes sense. Like, I mean, obviously, we've all heard like records don't make that much money, especially with the streaming services now. The vinyl's coming back because, one, we crave something physical, but also artists love it because they make more money on vinyl than they do anything else. So really, though, concerts are where it's at. If you're like a Justin Bieber or a Taylor Swift or somebody like that, you're selling out like the biggest venues and stadiums that you can be in for hundreds, thousands of dollars, that makes sense. I mean, you're going to pay way more to go see Justin Bieber than you are, I don't even know who.
So in the same lines, they were talking about all of the guys in Sweden, and this guy Max Martin, and how they are the ones who have like, become the most like big time songwriters. They know how to write the hits, and they're the ones who come up with this formula. And they, like it says, they are legendary super producer, responsible for dozens of number one singles by Backstreet Boys, Katy Perry, Taylor Swift, and all these other ones. They mention more later on. But the thing that made me think about this is, you're saying how like they're wanting to reject the that structure.
That I am not part of the formula.
Yes, exactly. Like they were kind of talking about that and how. So a great musical hook is a great question with an answer that asks to repeat the question. People like new and surprising melodies, but when we feel like we can accurately make tiny predictions about how the song is going to go, it feels really good.
Now I'm just trying to figure out if I do that or not, because I actually really hate figuring out an ending to something. For example, like in books or movies, everyone's always like, you could just tell what was going to happen. I can never tell what's going to happen because I don't want to know what's going to happen. I like the anticipation and the surprise. So now I'm just trying to figure out if that is true for me or not in music. I've never consciously thought about it. I didn't even know it was a thing. So I don't know. Because I really don't feel like I approach things other than my life wanting to know the answers. Obviously I want to know where I'm going in life, but like a song, a book, a movie, any kind of art, like I don't expect answers or anything like that. I like the anticipation. Interesting. I just don't want to be part of the formula. I feel like I am more nuanced than that.
But you say I feel like I'm more nuanced than that, but you love personality test, and
I do.
You like figuring out who you are, and then you're excited but also angry. I understand, like there's a little more to it. Whenever you figure out like, oh wait,
this is me.
This is me.
But that's because I want answers in my own life, but not when I'm looking at art. I don't want the answer. I think the beauty of art is the questions, and in music as well. Like I like when people, I understand having like I understand that, kind of the point of art is to share in the hope of life, and like it's not all like obviously relating to people, and I think that it kind of saying like I understand where you're coming from. I feel that too, like you're not alone kind of thing, but then also obviously like celebrating the hope. But I like when people are just like, I don't know, this kind of sucks, right? Like that actually makes me feel more understood, because a lot of times we don't have answers, and we don't want anyone to encourage us. We just want them to be like, yes, it sucks. I get it. I like those questions in art. So I just find it so, I don't know. I don't think I search for an answer or like knowing the ending of something.
But I think that's talking about like your conscious brain, like your subconscious brain is desiring that. It's like looking for those things, and like what we were talking about with earworms.
Yeah.
Like I think there's a specific like thing they talk about with earworms that really, I don't know, kind of sums that up. And it says earworms are like a keyhole into music's manipulation of times past and future. The earworm infested brain is stuck in a loop between repetition, I want to remember how this goes, and in anticipation, I want to know how this ends. The very entanglement, the pull of repetition versus the push of anticipation, defines the catchiest songs. And it goes on to say, when a song gets stuck in your head, it drives you crazy. But since the affliction is universal and timeless and self-inflicted, it must say something about our internal circuitry. An earworm is a cognitive quirl. The automatic mind craves repetition that the aware brain finds annoying, like we were just saying. And and perhaps the unconscious self wants more repetition, wants more of the old, wants more of the familiar, than the conscious self thinks is good.
I guess I have just never thought about music as conscious and subconscious, so I don't know. But I feel like that's not me.
Of course you don't. I mean, I don't think anybody wants to think of themselves like that. That they can be, that somebody can sit in a room and say, if we make it like this, if we're going to put it on the radio, we're going to put it out in the ether,
Right.
and Sarah is going to love this.
Right.
Because we know that if we make her brain feel this way, she's going to be like, oh my gosh, this new Taylor Swift album is revolutionary and I love it so much. But you want to think that you stumbled upon Taylor Swift, some obscure artist, and say like, listen to the album and be like,
that about Taylor Swift.
Right. But you just want to be like, oh
Yes.
man, listen to this. It's so revolutionary. It like changes the music game. I love it so much. It makes me feel X, Y, and Z.
I do feel that way about the 1975.
Mhm.
I feel like a lot of people can say that because they're sort of genreless and kind of do their own thing. Like they're obviously a little bit of pop, a little bit of like melancholy, a little bit of all this stuff, right? And I do gravitate more toward the 1975. Like if I were picking a favorite band, it would be the 1975 because of that reason. Because I feel like they are revolutionary and they are genreless and they are just good at what they do. Maybe that says something about me.
But also, I mean, I think about, what we're talking about here is, specifically in the book, it's talking about the hits. Like the ones that are like top 40, they stay in the top of the charts for weeks and weeks and weeks on end because the masses all agree like we want to hear more of this. Whenever you go like into the department stores and they're playing these songs, you like that, it makes you feel good, you understand it. Like it's nothing like like playing a new Kendrick Lamar song like in a department store where
it's very different than playing a Taylor Swift or an Ed Sheeran.
It's very different than playing...
Ed Sheeran's Shape of You. Yeah, that's maybe a good example.
Exactly. Like playing like a song that has a very predictable like way it's going, is getting stuck in your head. Like the melody is like... It like is an earworm. Like most of like Kendrick Lamar is not going to be that way.
Right.
It's not going to like get stuck in like this, familiarity, repetition type thing.
But okay.
And so what I'm saying is that, we're talking about hits in the top 40,
right.
That type of stuff versus like artists that are obscure or artists that like
you relate to,
you relate to or whatever, because even as big as like the 1975 is, they're not on the
same level as Taylor Swift or something.
Of like the hits.
Yeah.
Of the ones that like these guys in Sweden write for Justin Bieber and, they put out, his big like electronic hit that...
Boyfriend or something.
No.
Isn't that one of his biggest?
That...
What Do You Mean?
Yeah.
Is that the one?
The one that came out before the album.
Yeah. Oh, no, that wasn't what that... Oh, shoot. Don't remember. I liked it. I remember that.
Yeah. It was a featuring like Justin Bieber thing.
Yeah.
And like it was huge, massive hit.
Yeah, I guess that. Yeah, I can understand, and I do like those songs. Okay, so is it? It's pretty much just about the pop genre then.
Yeah,
specifically pop, top 40 pop music. That's, I mean.
Yeah,
right?
I mean that's kind of what we're talking about, just because that is kind of where the book was like talking about, is like popular pop music.
But it can happen across all genres.
Yeah.
Or it is a thing across all genres.
Right.
Makes me rethink everything I knew or thought I knew about music.
And like you find a new artist and you're listening, you're like, do I like this because I like this, or do I like this because it sounds enough familiar to what I actually like, but also enough new that
I'm gonna hate every music that comes out now and be like, they just want me to like this.
You can't tell me what to do.
You can't tell me what to do.
I like what I like because I like it.
Not because you told me to. Not because you wrote a pre-chorus. That is interesting. I think it's fascinating how our brains work.
Mm-hmm.
And how it's just so instinctive and we can't even really control it. Even if we know about it.
Right.
We can't even control it.
The brain is...
It wants what it wants.
It's fascinating.
Well, now I'm going to listen to every pop song that I know of that I love and see if I can find the similarities.
Another thing that was really interesting is they were talking about Spotify, and you know how Spotify has like the, you might like playlist.
Right.
So that was an algorithm, and they have an algorithm that like looks at all of the music that you listen to. And so the example they gave of the way that it may work is, let's say there's song A, B, and C, and you have song A and C in your library. Well, the algorithm looks through like thousands and thousands of playlists and notices that song A and C are on 1,000 playlists with song B.
Oh.
And so it knows like, okay, well, this playlist has song A and C. It also has song B. And so we can recommend song B to Sarah, and she'll probably like this song. Well, they were talking about how whenever they first rolled out that feature, there was a bug in the algorithm that would actually put songs that you already listened to in the songs you may like playlist. And so people would be listening to the playlist, and it would have like, a song that you already know in the playlist. And so that was an actual bug in the system. Well, once they figured out that bug was there, they took it out, and the amount of listens that went into the songs you may love playlist dropped like a tank, like
I can absolutely see that.
Just dropped because there was nothing familiar on the playlist, and so people stopped listening to it. But whenever there was at least a couple songs that they already knew, that level of trust went up in the playlist because they're like, oh yeah, I love this song. Like, and basically
they knew what to expect from at least a few of the songs, so they would give it a chance.
Right.
Yeah.
And it made you feel like, it also made you feel good because you already like this song. You already know this song. And so it's like, oh, look, I have good taste.
I'm so mad because this was just happening to me the other day on Apple Music. I was like searching for, it's when I found Vance Joy, but I was just searching for new music, and I found that Apple creates a playlist for you of, I don't remember what it's called, but it's like songs you love. And it's specifically songs that you have listened to, or at least on my playlist that it created. It was songs that I already listened to, or that are in my collection already that I don't typically listen to, but are like the other songs that I always listen to. Every single song on there was a song in my collection. And I was so excited because I was like, oh my gosh, I forgot about this song. And I listened to that playlist because I was like, oh, I know I'm going to want to listen to these songs. And I know that I like these songs that are in my collection. So I listened to it. They got me. I'm so mad.
Another crazy thing that you were talking about earlier, how you hate to be like that, you don't want to be a part of a system.
Yeah, no. You don't
gotta get out of the system.
Even though you obviously do.
So I threw it on the ground.
Yep.
So
I ain't a phone. Isn't that what he says?
Yeah. I ain't a part of your system. So they was talking about how there's actually a system that they put new songs through. And so it's basically like a focus group is kind of how you would say. Okay. And so they put these new songs through, and these people that are part of this focus group, they score them in whatever way they score them. And there's it's scored like, I don't remember what the highest level is, but any score above 65 is considered eligible to be a breakout hit. Okay. And
that's only a D. That's not bad.
Yeah, which is interesting that it did that, but it gave these songs that were huge hits in 2015, like Hotline Bling. Oh man, got a 70. The Hills by The Weeknd got 71. Sorry by Justin Bieber got a 77.
Of course.
What Do You Mean by Justin Bieber got 79.
That's the one. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. What Do You Mean? And then what was funny is Hello by Adele got a 105.
Ooh, but that's not surprising because Adele.
Right, but this is the thing that like I highlighted in this book. It says every song on the 21 album scored above an 80. Every single song.
Wow. That's shocking because
even
What Do You Mean only got a 79. Mm-hmm.
Every single song. And the CEO of the company who does the ranking said, we've never seen that before, and we've never seen it since. Obviously, since 2015, it's only been a couple of years. But as of right now, they have not seen an album, every single song above an 80.
You know what? This may be like not the same thing, but I did see an article, and I can't remember what song it was, but it was a song that Adele put out. And there's a specific note that she sings in the song that makes you feel a certain emotion. It's like a brain thing. And like whatever note that is makes you feel this certain emotion. And it was one of her most popular songs ever. And that's why literally every person ever loved it, because she sang that one specific note. I can't remember what song it was. I wonder if it was off that album, though.
Probably. So the thing with all those songs, and the reason they were actually like talking about them and why it gave them a certain hit number, is because it was talking about how all those were massive hits, but that year there were hundreds of songs that actually scored higher than all of those songs. But because what it's saying is, above a certain level, catchiness doesn't make a song a monster hit. Exposure does. And so like what we were talking about earlier, how there's probably tons of songs that, make you feel something or like are awesome stuff, but if they don't have the distribution, if they don't get out there, you never even know about them.
Yeah.
So it says, for every great song that makes it into the charts and has months of airplay, there are 100 other songs that are just as good, if not better, which if sung by the right artist or with the right marketing would be a smash hit. But the point is that every year, hundreds of songs won't become hits, and it will have very little to do with the fact that they weren't catchy enough. But beyond a certain level of songwriting genius, how many times an audience have heard a melody matters more for its popularity than how inherently catchy it is. And so it's just talking about how radio play and, whatever, it's like if the industry decides it wants Hotline Bling to be a hit, it's above the threshold of catchiness. So you can't just like pick a crappy song and say,
this is
if we play Barney's, I Love You song like 1,000 times, people are going to end up loving it. It's more so that, it was already above the threshold. They had a huge artist sing it, but then put tons of marketing dollars behind it and got tons of radio play behind it. And so it's like, it's already catchy enough, but then they play Hotline Bling on every radio station. They put it on every playlist, that you're seeing or whatever. And then you heard it 10 times and now you can't get, call me on your cell phone out of your head.
It's sort of like how, which I feel like that is a little bit of a disservice to people. I mean, obviously there's a reason that most of the top
it's because we're
songs,
a market-driven economy, though.
Right. But I feel like it's a little bit of a disservice to people, but to not give them the right or the best music. So, for example, it happens in the book industry, too. Like the New York Times bestseller list is not necessarily the actual best books that are out there right now. It's the best books that have the best marketing, and not necessarily the ones that people have read and highly reviewed.
That's the thing with all industry is that's a list of the most popular books.
Right.
The top 40 is the most popular songs.
Right.
And then the what do you call the dollar amount the movies are making?
Like the box office.
Yes, the box office numbers are the most popular movies, not the best ones.
Right.
Like the Oscar-winning movies are typically never the movies that make the most, at the box office. Because if they were, the best picture would be Transformers every year. It's like Transformers and Fast and the Furious, would have won Best Picture of the Year because they made the most money.
Yeah.
But it's like nowhere near like the art of, a lot of people saw those movies, but nowhere near like the artfulness of a Best Picture winner.
I guess you just have to do your own research. Is that what we're saying?
Yeah, it's mostly... This is talking about how to create, we're talking about how massive hits are made, not necessarily how great art is made.
True. Different. Sometimes the same.
Yeah. It's awesome whenever things like that align.
Yeah.
But, typically
You're right. We're more talking about hits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does that make you feel better?
It does. Actually, it actually does make me feel better. Could you tell?
Yeah. It all clicked.
It all clicked because
our conversation all came to Sarah realizing that
because
hits don't mean art.
Yes, exactly. Not that I don't like a good hit song, but
yes,
I'm a little snobbish sometimes in my art. I try not to be, but I am a little bit. I can't help it.
So, I mean, I think, this all can culminate to kind of, we can leave it with this question, which is at the end of one of the chapters of Hitmakers is, this might be the most important question for every creator and maker in the world. How do you make something new if most people just like what they know? Is it possible to surprise with familiarity?
That is a really deep question. I mean, obviously, I don't know the science behind it because
I'm not a scientist.
I don't care about science. I like the more mysterious, so I don't really want to know the science behind it. But I feel like if you're just literally true to the person that you are and you put that art in the world, people will appreciate it. And I think
we all love to believe that, but ultimately I don't think that's true.
I think it is. I think like if you can see the person behind the art, if you can see, if we're talking specifically music, if you can see that they are passionate about what they're creating, or videos like we talk about, like if you're passionate about what you're creating, eventually at some point people will appreciate it. With
the asterisk, the caveat that it's good.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, obviously.
We've seen a lot of passionate people on American Idol.
Yes, obviously there is a level of creativity and artistic ability and talent that goes into it, but we're just assuming that the talent is there, right? Mm-hmm. I think that if you just make what is true to you, people will hate it too, but people will appreciate it.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree.
Because it's art and it's expressing life, whatever that is.
And you are absolutely correct, but it doesn't mean it's going to be a hit.
Right. But again, yeah, I don't look at it like what's going to be a hit and what's going to not.
Yeah, I don't think we do. We don't ever create anything trying to make be a top,
whatever,
selling top artist. We're just like, we want to make things that are good. Like, we obviously have a level of taste and we hope that we can, meet or exceed that taste. And we're trying to do the things that we're passionate about and things that we love. But there are very few people that the thing that they're good at, the thing that they're passionate about align, one.
Right.
And then those two things aligning and it being something that is mass marketable.
Right.
That can be a huge hit and you could be one of the top 2% that makes 80% of the revenue of that industry.
It's not likely.
Right.
I
mean, honestly, you have a 98% chance of failure considering that the 2% are the only ones who make it in that way.
I think
it doesn't mean you can't succeed because you can still succeed as an artist, as a musician, a video maker, whatever it is, in making a normal lifestyle living, and you can be 100% fulfilled.
Or even
above
average.
Yeah. But like we're saying, we're talking about the hits.
The hits.
Yeah.
I think it also, with that question, how do you make something new but still familiar enough? I think it also, sometimes there is going to be, if you want to be a change maker and create something new, you're just gonna have to stomach the fact that people will hate it and probably will hate it for a long time.
Right.
I mean, that's how everything new happens.
Yeah.
Somebody comes along, the painter guy that you were telling me about. What's his name? Calabat?
Something like that.
Something like that. He was the original creator of Impressionist art. He inspired Van Gogh and Monet.
Well, he was just a peer of those people. He was he was an up and coming along with Monet.
Right, but he inspired them to create their paintings. He never got famous or made a living from his art.
And at that time, everybody rejected Impressionist painting. They basically, the taste level, like they were set aside. Like that isn't art. Like
Right.
you can't say that, you put that in our museum and say it's art.
Right. And he sort of like championed that and fought for it for his entire life. Never made it.
Mm-hmm.
Never became appreciated like Van Gogh and Monet, but he's the reason it's around. And so I feel like in order to be a change maker, to be a revolutionist, like you're going to have to accept that for a long time, maybe a long time, people will hate what you're creating because it's different and it's new. So I think like if you're truly wanting to create something new and put something new on the table, you have to be okay with being hated. And with, especially like with social media now, you have to be okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
Or nothing is ever going to change. And you're just going to you're going to create what feels like to you mediocre art. I mean, that's just how it is, I think. You just have to get over the fact that people will hate what you create. But that's the only way you can be a change maker, and that's the only way you can create better, newer
Right. You're not going to make
art.
the top hit for that year.
Right.
But maybe you made the change that created the entire genre.
Right.
For, the next decade.
Mm-hmm.
Or, maybe obviously there's some people who are too early.
Yeah.
Which is sad. Because those people typically aren't the ones who end up getting the recognition.
Right.
But
eventually they end up being revered for what they did and what they contributed. Yeah. And that is one of the saddest things in life to me. But they're necessary.
I mean, it's kind of like this is a bigger scale.
Right.
But it's kind of like Apple in the fact that they are rarely the first to market.
Right.
But they look at what is first to market, they find what it is, they refine it, and they make it what they consider the best. Mm-hmm. And so they bring the best to the market. Then they get the accolades of being the revolutionary. Mm-hmm. Whenever in reality, somebody had already brought it to market first.
Right.
And it wasn't familiar enough, nor did it have, like we were talking about with hits being like produced, it didn't have the distribution, it didn't have the marketing. Mm-hmm. But when people like Apple, who is $1 trillion company, are able to put something out,
right,
and then they, have all the money to go behind it.
But, I think you can also say the opposite, especially specifically about Steve Jobs. He was a revolutionary in what he created. The iPod, nobody even knew that they wanted.
But they weren't the first music player to market.
Yeah, I know.
It's revolutionary not because of the product, but because they revolutionized the way music was sold.
Okay, yes.
In the iPod, it's like they did it while producing a product that beat out all the competition. Mm-hmm. Like, this is the better music player, but ultimately we are revolutionizing not the music player, we're revolutionizing the music industry.
Yeah, which they did.
Right.
And he also, he was always like taking things out of the computer before people were ready for it, like the floppy disk and things like that. Like he was an actual revolutionary, and people hated what he did. Like there was so much pushback by the things that he decided to do, but he was like, well, this is what you need.
They hate the year that it happened. Yeah. But then the next year, whenever everybody follows suit and it becomes familiar, right? It's like, how could we ever live without this thing or with that old thing, you know, or whatever it is?
I just think, I think if you're going to be a change maker or a revolutionary, introduce something new in art. Something maybe not brand new, because nothing is actually new anymore. Everything has been created.
Everything's a remix. That's a good video to look up.
Yeah. But, you're going to introduce something that is not familiar. You have to accept the fact that people are going to hate it, and you just continue on your way. That's just how it is. Yeah. You have to be solid in the fact that this is what the world needs.
But if you want to make a hit, you can just follow a simple formula. Make sure that you already have a huge name behind you and that you have lots of marketing dollars.
Yes.
Make sure you write something that is better than average, but it doesn't have to be
pretty
great.
Catchy.
Yeah. And you can make yourself $1 million.
I'll like it, apparently.
And we'll dance to it all night long.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that conversation did not end up where I thought it was going to go, but I'm glad it did.
I feel like this is pretty much how all my conversations go, though. We start with something, and then I'm like, oh, but what about these 12 other things? Oh, well.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys for listening to episode 2 of Deeply Curious. We're really excited to get this thing going, and we really appreciate all of your feedback and reviews and everything on the first episode. Just a reminder of the things that we love this week. I mentioned Moment lenses, which are really amazing, beautiful lenses that you can attach to your phone. You just buy the case that matches up with your phone, and then you can use these really awesome lenses to take beautiful portraits or landscapes or whatever you want. Basically just step up your phone photography game, and I've been enjoying them. I think you would too. You can get them at Moment, moment.codyjensen.com. And Sarah was loving this boy.
Love Simon. I'm obsessed. It's a great book. It really is. It's a fantastic book. It's a great story. I think it's a story that needs to be told. I feel like it's very inclusive and very self-aware of the type of story and movie that they are. It's a great adaptation. So
there's a link to that in the show notes. Would greatly appreciate it if you checked these things out. All of this helps support us as we continue to make these podcasts and these vlogs and make the content that you guys are enjoying. So thank you guys for tuning in and listening. Thank you guys for sharing and subscribing. It's very much appreciated. We'll end this one here, and we'll see you next week.
bye.